So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at The Lord of the Rings, The Art of the Two Towers. And I haven't called this a review, as it's really not, because literally everything I said about The Art of the Fellowship of the Ring can be applied to this book and The Art of Return of the King, and I don't want to just repeat myself and bore the people who already saw that review. Especially because there's really nothing I need to warn you against with these books. They're easily the best three books that have been released for the Lord of the Rings movies. So if you like what you see in the flip through, then you've got nothing to worry about. I think what really contributes to these being great art books beyond the art itself is the commentary from the designers throughout is some of the best I've read in an art book. Probably because there is so much of it and the comments they make refer to the specific pieces you're looking at on the page, which is so much more insightful than just talking about the designs of the film in a general sense. Especially because it means that even when you're looking at some of the more boring sketches of doors and cups and things, there's usually a pretty good chance that the accompanying text will make it a little more interesting. Also, these books have a really wonderful focus on not just showing the final designs as you see it on screen, so you get a real sense of the development, which is unfortunately something that most other art books neglect to do. So what I thought we could talk about while you're looking at the flip through for this book and in the next video on The Art of the Return of the King is, in the interest of really rounding out and completing this long series of reviews on the Lord of the Rings movie books, is to give some sort of mini reviews to the books that won't be getting their own videos, either because I've given them away, or they were just books that I've borrowed in the past, or that I've just never felt compelled to purchase them. I'm not going to be mentioning any other Middle-earth related books or Middle-earth art books that aren't specifically related to the movies, as that would take up a whole video in itself. So first up is The Lord of the Rings, The Official Movie Guide by Brian Sibley, and I have mentioned this book before, and it's basically a super underwhelming predecessor to his much better making of the trilogy book that I have done a review on. It just seems like something they rushed to get out to promote Fellowship, and so it really is only for the obsessive completist for the sake of their collection. Even I ended up getting rid of it just because I thought I'm never going to waste my time reading this ever again. Also by Brian Sibley, we have The Fellowship of the Ring Insider's Guide. This is kind of like a making of book for the younger set, along the lines of the Two Towers Creatures book I reviewed. And basically it's just an even smaller, shittier version of the official movie guide. Speaking of shit, I've reviewed the awful visual companions previously, but believe it or not, they actually released other books called photo guides that they did for each of the three movies that are essentially the exact same thing as the visual companions, but even worse. Which, for such a thing to even be possible, is more mind-rendingly unfathomable and horrifying than reading the Necronomicon. Then there's The Music for the Lord of the Rings films, a comprehensive account of Howard Shaw's scores. This one actually sounds really interesting because there aren't many books that focus specifically on the music of one specific film. The reason I've never actually read it is because I'm not a particularly musical person, and so the creation of the score isn't something I'm super interested in. Although, having said that, there's a chapter on the music in the making of the trilogy book that I thought was incredibly interesting. So even though I can't comment on how good or bad the book actually is, I think it's definitely one to look into if you're interested in that area of the films. Then we have the Lord of the Rings location guidebooks. These books have been released in a bunch of extended editions, updated extended editions. They did versions for The Hobbit, they did a compilation edition, and basically they're about the New Zealand locations used to shoot the movies. They are official books, which is really good as the photographs are absolutely outstanding, and there's also a bit of exclusive commentary and stuff from Peter Jackson and others, but I've ultimately never found them worthy of a purchase. And the thing you really need to be aware of with these books is that they very much lean towards being not really a travel guide per se, but descriptions of the locations rather than being heavily making of focused. But I do think they are potentially really great books for some people, but if you are interested, I would strongly recommend doing a bit more research into them to make sure the content is something you're actually going to enjoy, and also finding out which is the best edition to get. You can actually find some pretty fun videos on YouTube of nerds wandering around New Zealand looking for the locations, but I know that from my own travels, despite what the New Zealand government and tourism and Ian McKellen want you to believe, it's not really Middle Earth in the way it appears on film, although of course New Zealand is still completely gorgeous and unique in its own right. Middle-earth envisioned The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings on screen, on stage, and beyond. This is another pretty great idea for a book where they look at all the different adaptations of Tolkien's work. I wasn't initially enamored with it just because I wasn't that interested in the non-movie adaptations, and most of the movie-related information is just reiterating what you already know from other sources. Actually, you know what? Screw it. I am going to get this book, so I'll do a proper review on it another time. So I think that will do for now, and we'll continue with the rest of this list when we take a look at the art book for The Return of the King.